point. All sessions after the opening ceremony will be held in the plenary hall, also known as the Kashim Shettima Hall, which is located to your left when accessing the conference center foyer just before the Africa Hall. Furthermore, just before entering the hall from the main entrance to your right, you will also find an additional restroom and conveniences accessible to all attendees. For those who would like a quick snack, staircases on both your right and left at the foyer lead directly to the Wiki's Cafe. Finally, throughout the center, you will discover a wide range of exhibition booths showcasing products and services. For further information and clarification, please contact the ushers in the hall.
Thank you very much. You've been given a mini tour of this facility, which is a sight for sore eyes. Also, I'd like to introduce you to our ushers. You can't miss them. They are wearing orange-colored dresses. And so if you needed to find out where the conveniences are, they would be the ones to speak to. I'd also like to crave your indulgence to put your phones on silent so that we can have a truly robust engagement today. I'd like to put on record that we have former Senate presidents here and former ministers and former members of the Nigerian National Assembly who have all come for this all-important gathering. I dare say that our guests, our very special guests, African Chiefs of Defense and their aides have arrived in their numbers here. Your Excellency, our special guest of honor, sir, I'd like to crave your indulgence to give them a resounding Abuja round of applause. I wish to sincerely welcome you, and I hope that your arrival yesterday indicated to you the high level of hospitality that Nigeria is well known for, that you were well taken care of, and that you tried some of our more gourmet cuisines, including our swallow, and perhaps a little bit of pepper soup with some spice in it. Be careful. You need to really find out the temperature of the spice before you try it. But the jollof rice, as is always said, and I know that the Ghanaian delegation is here, the Nigerian one is leading. I can say that for sure. I believe so. Not just because I'm Nigerian, but I've tried jollof rice in Nairobi, and I've tried the jollof rice in Ghana. I've tried also in Lome and in Senegal, and I know that Nigeria trumps all the jollof rices. Let's just accept that today. Having said that, Your Excellency, our special guest of honor, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me take this opportunity to introduce our guests, African Chiefs of Defense, who have arrived here with us, and the representatives of the various delegations across the various countries. I'd like to start with the representative of the Chief of Defense Staff, Egypt, Major General Bibas Wala Adel Abel Farag. Can we see by a show of hand if you're here? Let's give you a round of applause. We welcome you. We thank you for coming. We welcome Colonel Ramadan Ahmed Elbaz Ramadan, who is also on the Egyptian entourage. Permit me to take immediately Somalia, whose head of delegation is Major General Odawa Yusuf Ragi. He's here with us. Thank you so much. We see you. Would like to also quickly welcome Brigadier General Abdul Karim Neja, representative of Morocco Inspector General. Welcome, sir. It's good to see you. Shall I then welcome General Jacob John Mkunda, Chief of Defense Forces, Tanzania. Habari yako, sir. Welcome. Thank you. Would like to welcome Major General Guy Blanchard Okoye, Chief of Defense Staff, Congo Brazzaville. I'd like to welcome Colonel Longoda Christian, who is on that entourage. I'd like to welcome Major General Kaliba Tati Bernard, representative of Chief of Defense Forces, Democratic Republic of Congo. Lieutenant General Kayanja Muhanga, representative of Chief of Defense Forces, Uganda. Let me welcome His Excellency Julio dos Santos Jane, Chief of Defense Staff, Mozambique. time to welcome now Mohammed El Mokhtar Sheikh Mani, representative of Mauritania Armed Forces. Welcome. Major General Guila Zubair, Algerian Delegation. Major General Lanjed Hamani, Tunisian Delegation Head. General Daou Atujong Newell Daou, CDF, South Sudan. Lieutenant General George Alexander Jaffu, representing CDF, Malawi. Major General Mamadou Zephyrin, Central African Republic, Head of Team. Brigadier General João Pedro Colonel Ali Abdurrahman Didi, Chief of Army Staff, representing the COS Sahrawi. Brigadier General Yusuf Idi Jihadi, representing Comoros as head of delegation. I'd like to greet and welcome Brigadier General Melingi Numa Donatain, representing Chief of Defense Staff, Cameroon. Please help me welcome Major General Aktofel Ndegu Nambahu, representing CDF, Namibia. Lieutenant General Ziele, Commander of Zambian Army. Help me greet and welcome General Mafwanya, South Africa Chief of Defense Forces. And we have Brigadier General E.N. Shabangu, representative of the Commodore Eswatini Defense Force. Eswatini. There he is. Colonel Major Sunana Kalkoye, representative of Niger CDS. Lieutenant General Birhanu Bekele, representative of CDS Ethiopia. General Abakar Abdul Karim Daud, Chief of Defense Staff, Chad. Lieutenant General El Haddad Mohammed, representative of Libyan Chief of Defense Forces. Major General Samuel Fernandez, Guinea-Bissau. Lieutenant General William Agapong, Chief of Defense Staff, Ghana. General C.A. Bagwidi, Chief of Defense Staff, Benin Republic. Lieutenant General Mamat O.A. Cham, Chief of Defense Staff, the Gambia. Colonel Kezali Gilewu Gwesa, representative of Chief of Staff, Liberia. Lieutenant General Mbaye Sisse, CGS Armed Forces of the Senegal. Lieutenant General Amara Idara Bangura, Chief of Defense Staff, Sierra Leone. General Kasawa Kolemaga, Chief of Defense Staff, Togo. And Lieutenant General Ibrahima Sori Bangura, Chief of Defense Staff, Guinea. Your Excellency, special guest of honor, sir, Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, on my listing, these are the people who are here with their entourage and they're in their numbers. Other delegates are coming, and once they arrive here, we will update you. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this is Africa Chiefs of Defense Staff Summit 2025, and I deliberately decided to wear a dress that has a surprise in the back. Security is about surprising your enemies. So I decided that what should have looked like the front is now in the back, because my designer said, wear a dress that is of all intent and purposes, a dress that symbolizes security, which is what I wore. So when I step down, you might be able to see the back of my dress, but now everything seems normal. Surprise your enemy is what security forces say. I think I've passed. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, It's time to break the ice before we invite our host to speak to us. Please allow me to introduce a poet performer. Sharifa Ibrahim Zarma is a Nigerian author and spoken word poet whose voice resonates with themes of resilience, culture, and hope. Through her writings and performances, Sharifa inspires diverse audiences with her unique blend of storytelling, artistry, and advocacy. Her poetry today is about unity is your strongest armor and the celebration of the Nigerian armed forces, and overall about celebrating security. Let's give her a warm Abuja welcome as she makes her walk. It's a long walk, so please let's keep clapping as she makes her way to the podium. Thank you very much. She's a poet, she's not a soldier, so she walks like a poet. You know, if she was a soldier, she would be walking a little more, you know. So welcome to you, and I look forward, as we all do, to your poem today.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sharifa Ibrahim Zarma. Please permit me to stand on already established protocols. Before I proceed, I would like to pay tribute to the armed forces. For one to choose this path of profession, this is the utmost act of priority any human will choose for his country. For you gave your blood, sweat, and tears so we would see another day. You gave up the certainty of your future to secure ours. You gave so much that only you know the length and depth. You put your lives in peril innumerably in ways no civilian could dare to stand. We can never repay you or thank you enough, and words will never be enough. But all we can say is history will never forget your names, and the hands of time can never unwrite your service. So, as an African, it is my greatest honor to stand amongst you, honorable leaders, soldiers, warriors, and patriots of your country, and on behalf of all, that we appreciate you and we thank you for your service. Here goes my poem. Nigeria, my beloved country, Africa, the great continent. From time immemorial, our borders were not accidents of chance, but divine brushstrokes on a living canvas. A continent conceived in unity, spun together not as fragments, but as one fabric of destiny. And so, to tear one thread is to weaken the whole. We are at a junction which takes flight to a destination where no nation should stand alone. Inclusivity should walk with might, not just might, but hold hands with hope. That our collaborative partnerships begin to delink selected efforts. No longer shall we patch security with scattered threads. Let every hand pull the fabric together that intertwines our destinies. For this great fabric of unique tribes possessing infinite resources, from wisdom to will, from deserts to forests, and savannas to coasts, our soldiers stand one heartbeat, one shield. Warriors of today, custodians of tomorrow. Your service is the unseen thread that hold Africa's fabric whole. To the fallen whose blood became seed, we sing of your courage, eternal indeed. You rest in the soul, yet live in our souls. Guardians of peace, your names woven in Africa's immortal memory, imprinted eternally in strength. Now we gather in the summit's light to fetch collective strength against the night, to face new threats with unity's embrace and craft homegrown solutions for Africa's space, where private hands and public shapes combine, for peace secured, our destinies align. Let us stand together against terror, cyber shadows and unrest calls. Our unity became the armor for all. Let us not borrow scripts, but visions we sow. From Africa's soil, our strategies grow. Let us tap from the coder's code to builders' hands, as industry strengthens the soldiers' hands. For peace is the seed from which the future blooms, and security light the nation's path. Thank you.
Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for Sharifa as she has delivered for us the essence of what it means to be unified, what it means to be secure, and what it means to work in the armed forces of any country to ensure that all the work that we do is well captured. I do not think that we spend enough time celebrating members of the armed forces. I think one of the nations that does it so well is the United States of America. And if you meet any of them who has served, whether they are retired or they are serving, they say, we thank you for your service. All the citizens of that country know how to thank our people for their service, for keeping us secure. Let's hear another round of applause for all those gathered here for security. We salute your service. We thank you for the work that you do. We had done some introductions much earlier in the day, and we're very pleased that all our security agencies are here. We have the Director General of State Services, Mr. Oluwatosin Adeola Ajayi, who is here with us. We thank you for joining us for this very important summit. It's now time to listen to the welcome remarks by the convener and chief host, a people-centric general, whose leadership philosophy is to nurture a professional armed forces of Nigeria that is people-centric, collaborative, and capable of meeting constitutional responsibilities in a joint environment. A one-time commander of the largest military operations in Nigeria, Operation Lafia Dole, a former commander of the largest corps in the Nigerian Army, the Infantry Corps, chairman of the ECOWAS Committee of the Chief of Defense Staff, a firm believer and key driver of the renewed hope agenda of Mr. President. Help me welcome the 18th Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, to formally welcome our esteemed guests as he makes his way up. Let's celebrate him.
Thank you very much, my great auntie. It's good to see you again.
Always a pleasure.
The President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, ably represented by our own there, the Vice President, His Excellency Senator Kashim Shettima, GCON, the Senate President, His Excellency Distinguished Senator Goodwill, GCON, represented by Senator Ahmed Lawan, the Deputy Secretary General, United Nations, Hajia Aminaji Mohammed, GCON, distinguished members of the National Assembly here present, Your Excellencies, Executive Governors and their representatives, the Honorable Minister of State, the Service Chiefs and Inspector General of Police, the Chairperson of African Union, the ECOWAS Chairman, heads of security agencies and parastatals, my brothers, Service Chiefs and Inspector General of Police, the Chairperson of African Union, the ECOWAS Chairman, heads of security agencies and parastatals, former Chiefs of Defense Staff and Service Chiefs, heads of corporate organizations, heads of military establishments, captains of industry, very senior military and paramilitary officers, both serving and retired, members of the summit, members of the diplomatic corps, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen. It is with immense honor and great pleasure that I welcome you all to Abuja, the heart of Nigeria, for this historic inaugural African Chiefs of Defense Staff Summit on this very wonderful day, the 25th of August 2025. On behalf of the President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, and the good people of this great nation, I extend our warmest akwaba, bienvenue, and as we say in Nigeria, ekabo, ndeu, barka da zuwa. Distinguished Chiefs of Defense Staff, ladies and gentlemen, today we gather at a critical juncture in our continent's history. Africa stands on the edge of unprecedented opportunity, driven by a vibrant youth population, vast resources, and a spirit of innovation. Yet, this promise is challenged by a complex and evolving spectrum of security threats. From the scourge of violent extremism and terrorism to the menace of transnational organized crime, piracy, and the insidious impacts of climate change on conflict, these challenges recognize no borders. They are hydra-headed, resilient, and demand a response that is equally dynamic, unified, and strategic. The choice of the theme of this summit, combating contemporary threats to regional peace and security in Africa, the role of defense collaboration, is both timely and pertinent. It captures the urgent need for a united action in addressing the complex and evolving security challenges confronting our continent. Consequently, this gathering offers us a rare opportunity to forge a unified front. It is a platform to harmonize our doctrines, strengthen interoperability, and build enduring trust among our defense institutions. We must therefore seize this opportunity to craft a new architecture of African-led security cooperation. As host nations, Nigeria is deeply committed to the ideals of regional stability and continental defense integration. Our armed forces have consistently contributed to peacekeeping operations, counter-terrorism efforts, and humanitarian missions across Africa. We believe that true security is not achieved in isolation. It is built through shared intelligence, joint training, and coordinated action. Nigeria stands ready to work with our brothers and sisters across the continent to develop frameworks that are proactive, resilient, and responsive to the realities of our time. Distinguished colleagues, the battlefield is evolving. The threats of today are no longer confined to conventional warfare. They are digital, asymmetric, and often invisible. The enemy is within. As Chiefs of Defense Staff and heads of our armed forces, we must lead the charge in modernizing our forces, investing in cyber defense, artificial intelligence, and indigenous military technology, without which it will be difficult for us to achieve our security. The challenges before us are great, but so too is our resolve. Let us rise above division and embrace unity. Let us build a continent where our people can live free from fear and where our armed forces are symbols of stability, professionalism, and pride. Let us use the summit to explore how we can build a defense industrial base that is Africa in origin, Africa in design, and Africa in purpose. The Economic Committee of West African States, ECOWAS for short, the African Union's peace and security architecture, and other regional mechanisms have provided a vital foundation. But we must now build upon this foundation with greater resolve. We must be the architects of our own security and destiny. As we deliberate on strategy and policy, let us not forget the brave men and women who serve under our command. Many have paid the ultimate price in defense of our nations. Their courage and sacrifice must inspire us to build institutions that are not only strong, but just and accountable. Before I round down, with the permission of the special guest of honor, in order to honor those whom have paid the supreme price, both in the armed forces and as citizens of Africa, permit me to kindly request that we kindly stand up and observe a minute silence in honor of those that have paid this price. Thank you, sir. May the gentle souls of our brothers and sisters who have sacrificed themselves for the good and peace of Africa May it rest in perfect peace. You may kindly take your seat, sir. At this juncture, let me extend our deepest appreciation to the President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, for his dynamic leadership and unwavering support to the Armed Forces of Nigeria. Your Excellency, you have always believed in the vision of a united Africa, and you have made today's gathering a reality. Let me also appreciate all our partners, regional institutions, especially ECOWAS, international allies, developmental agencies, and private sector collaborators whose unwavering support made this summit a reality. We will never forget the United Nations that have continued to provide the platform for peace all over the world. Your contributions, technical expertise, strategic collaboration, and other forms of support have been instrumental in bringing today's summit into fruition. We are grateful. To my fellow brothers and colleagues, the Chiefs of Defense Staff from across the African continent, I salute your commitment, your candor, and your courage. Your presence here in Abuja has sent a powerful message that Africa is ready to take ownership of its security narrative. Our deliberations must be frank, robust, and appreciative of our current geostrategic environment. We must therefore rise from the summit with that statement of unity and cooperation. Together, let us stand in defense of Africa. Together, let us secure our future. Viva Africa. I thank you all and wish us a fruitful deliberation. Thank you and God bless you all.
Your Excellency, Special Guest of Honor, Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, what an honor it is to be hosting such an important summit in Abuja. And indeed, that honor belongs to our chief host, the Chief of Defense Staff, Nigeria, who has received such a great number of visitors from yesterday. And today, he talks us through the fact that we are at the edge of unprecedented opportunity. We are challenged by complex and security threats, as a result of which all hands must be on deck to collaborate in providing the necessary security for our citizens across the board. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let's give a round of applause to our chief host, who has delivered that opening comment, welcomed us all, and set the tone. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we do have also with us the Controller General of Customs, Alhaji Bashir Adeni, who is here with us. We also have with us the GCU NNPC, Mr. Bayo Ojulari. We have the leadership of paramilitary agencies, FRSC. We also have those who work in the Office of the National Security Advisor in their numbers, who have arrived here to provide the necessary gravitas for this event. Permit me at this time to please welcome a man who oversees Nigeria's security architecture, and his name is Alhaji Muhammad Badaru Abubakar, Nigeria's Defense Minister. He is, as I see from my eye line, not here. Alhaji Matawale, are you speaking on his behalf today? Right. The Nigerian Minister of State Defense will come forward and speak for the defense architecture of Nigeria. Thank you very much. Please let's celebrate him as he makes his way to the podium. Thank you very much.
The President, Commander-in-Chief of Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, ably represented by the Vice President, His Excellency Senator Kashim Shettima, GCON, the Senate President, His Excellency Distinguished Senator Godswill Akpabio, GCON, represented by Senator Ahmed Lawal, the Speaker, House of Representatives, who is represented by Honorable Kalambaina, the Deputy Secretary General, United Nations, Haja Amina J. Mohammed, GCON, distinguished members of National Assembly here present, Your Excellencies, Executive Governors and their representatives, the Honorable Ministers here present, members of the Federal Executive Councils, Chief of Defense Staff and Defense Forces from African countries, Service Chiefs and Inspectors General of Police, the Chairperson of African Union, the ECOWAS Chairman, Head of Security Agencies and Parastatals, former Chief of Defense Staff and Service Chiefs, Head of Corporate Organization, Head of Military Establishment, Captain of Industries, very senior military and paramilitary officers, both serving and retired, partners of Summit, members of diplomatic corps, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen. It is both an honor and a duty to address this distinguished gathering of Africa's military leadership at this historic event. Today, we are joined by some of the continent's finest men and women who continue to stand guard to protect Africa's peace and security. This summit is more than meeting. It is a bold statement of our collective commitment to building a safer, stronger, more united Africa. Our continent is facing serious security threats from terrorism and insurgency to cyber attacks and security. These challenges are complex, transnational, increasingly asymmetric. They require not just national resilience, but also strong continental cooperation. Today, we take an important step forward. We affirm that Africa's security must be driven by African solutions, African leadership, and African unity. Nigeria has always played a leading role in promoting regional peace and stability. Our armed forces have been actively involved in peacekeeping, counter-terrorism, and humanitarian missions across Africa and beyond. We remain committed to strengthening our defense partnership, both bilateral and multilateral, to support peace, development, and democratic values. This summit reflects our belief that no single country can secure the continent alone. We must work together, sharing intelligence, aligning doctrine, and building trust among defense institutions. The future of warfare is digital, fast-moving, and unpredictable. As defense leaders, we must embrace innovation, we must invest in cyber defense, artificial intelligence, and indigenous military technologies. Africa must not just keep up with global trends, we must take the lead in shaping them. Let this summit serve as a platform for defense industrial collaboration, joint training, and strategic planning. Let us build defense institutions that are agile, accountable, and ready for challenge ahead. Going forward, I strongly advocate for this summit to become a regular event. Let it be institutionalized as an annual platform for strategic dialogue, coordinations, and professional exchange. Let us, from working groups and task forces, to sustain the momentum. Beyond this gathering, let us build a continent where peace is permanent and our armed forces stand as a symbol of pride, professionalism, and progress. I must also acknowledge and appreciate the President and the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, for his outstanding leadership and continued support to the Armed Forces of Nigeria. I also commend the Chief of Defense Staff, General C.J. Musa, for his exceptional leadership and foresight in organizing this inaugural African Chief of Defense Staff Summit His commitment to regional cooperation, operational excellence, and continental security has set a new standard in defense diplomacy. The success of the summit is a testament to his professionalism and dedication to unity among African defense institutions. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Ministry of Defense and the Government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, I thank you for your presence, your partnership, and your dedication to Africa's security. I wish you all productive and fruitful deliberation. Thank you, and may God bless the African continent.
Indeed, it is a moment to remember that if peace reigns on the continent, then every person who is in the armed forces has some respite. And that is the purpose of this Africa Chiefs of Defense Staff Summit. And now we have heard from the Defense Ministry and who has delivered that powerful speech this morning is Alhaji Matawale, who is the Minister of State Defense, who has spoken on behalf of the Nigerian Defense Ministry. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I would like to crave your indulgence to pick up a few recognitions real quickly. We have His Excellency Professor Tijani Bande, who is a former permanent representative to the UN and one-time president of the United Nations General Assembly. Would like to sincerely welcome him here. Of course, we have Malan Shehu Mohammed, the Corps Marshal, Federal Road Safety Corps, who joined us quite early in the day. And we have quite a number of Chiefs of Defense Staff, all former Chiefs of Defense Staff in Nigeria. And I would like to quickly take a moment to recognize them. I'd like to greet and welcome Air Marshal Alamin Dagash. I'd like to greet and welcome General Ogomodia. I'd like to greet and welcome General ML Agwai. I'd like to welcome Admiral Ibrahim, retired, Air Chief Marshal Pentirin. I'd like to also welcome General Oloni Shaking, General Elio Irabo, Lieutenant General Ihejika, former Kwas, Lieutenant General Farouk Yahaya, Vice Admiral AZ Gambo, Air Chief Marshal O.O. Petinri, former Chief of Defense Staff, Air Marshal I.O. Amao, former Chief of the Air Staff. We welcome you all sincerely and we thank you for being here to join the crop of people whom you showed the way and who now are doing such great work like the current Chief of Defense Staff. We thank you most sincerely for being here. This is the moment when we begin to invite the regional bodies to assist us in talking through how regional bodies are important, are critical, are useful for talking about security across borders and ensuring that every nation joined together at the hip is safe and secure. Help me at this time to please welcome Dr. Umar Aliu Toure, President of the ECOWAS Commission, as he delivers his own intervention.
Yeah, MC, I just want to make a slight correction. The President of the ECOWAS Commission, His Excellency Umar Aliu Toure, is unavoidably absent, and in his place, I, Ambassador Abdel Fattah Musa, the Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security of the ECOWAS Commission, will be reading his paper on his behalf. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the President of the ECOWAS Commission, His Excellency Dr. Umar Aliu Toure, I wish to welcome our distinguished guests and participants to the inaugural African Chiefs of Defense Staff Summit. It is my honor to acknowledge the presence, first and foremost, of His Excellency Kashim Shettima, Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, ably representing His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, President and Chief, the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Nigeria, the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Her Excellency Amina Mohammed. I would also, like to recognize the presence of Mohammed Badaro Abu Bakar, ably represented by the Minister of State, and then other honorable members of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, leadership of the Senate, House of Representatives. Here with us also, I want to, recognize the tireless efforts also of the Chief of Defense of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, General Christopher Musa, and his peers from across the African continent, and all the chiefs of our defense and intelligence services across the continent here present. There are a number of dignitaries from West Africa also here present, and I crave your indulgence just to recognize a few of them. And I'm being a bit selfish because these are the former leadership of the ECOWAS Commission. First, His Excellency Lansana Kouyaté, former Executive Secretary of ECOWAS Commission, and His Excellency Mohamed Ibn Chambers, the first President of the ECOWAS Commission, here present. And our number one partner within the international community, His Excellency Leonardo Simao, the Special Representative of the Secretary General for West Africa and head of this inaugural summit of the African Chiefs of Defense Staff under the theme Combating Contemporary Threats to Regional Peace and Security in Africa, the role of strategic defense collaboration, is a logical sequel to Nigerian-led continental initiative born out of the vision and determination of His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, to empower the peace and security intelligence establishments in this country to regionalize their initiatives to benefit the entire continent. This bold foresight has materialized in, among other endeavors, the ongoing transformation of the National Counter-Terrorism Center in Nigeria into an African non-kinetic counter-terrorism center. The efforts to establish the Combined Maritime Task Force, which will secure the combined exclusive maritime economic zone to spur the operationalization of the African Continental Free Trade Area, including by securing the maritime trade corridors linking West and Central Africa to the Americas, Asia, and Europe. The Joint Doctrine and Warfare Center, recently inaugurated in Abuja, is a microcosm of the key objectives of this summit. That is, ensuring intelligence sharing, coordinated and interoperable approaches to responses to the myriad insecurity facing the continent. ECOWAS is therefore incredibly delighted and welcomes this groundbreaking summit that will, among other objectives, be discussing border management and regional security, leveraging artificial intelligence for regional security, as well as the cardinal importance of regional cooperation in responding to threats posed by terrorism and violent extremism, banditry, transnational organized crime on land, at sea, and in the skies. and most importantly, the objective to integrate the continent's burgeoning private sector into the security discourse. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, no region in Africa is spared the scourge of terrorism, civil and predatory wars, organized crime, and underdevelopment. The conflict in Eastern DRC impacts the entire Great Lakes region and beyond. The crisis in Central Africa directly impacts West Africa. And the unresolved crisis in Libya and Sudan generate and allow an inflow of terrorists into the Sahel and beyond. The various crises may be local, but they require a coordinated continental response, with the African Union serving as the glue and the ultimate coordinating hub for these endeavors. There is no gainsaying that West Africa, in particular the Sahel sub-region, has emerged as the epicenter of global terrorism, with several analytical surveys indicating that the Sahel accounted for 51% of global terrorism deaths in 2024 alone. In disparate efforts to counter terrorism in the region, some ethnic groups have been collectively and unjustifiably demonized, associating them with terrorist franchises and thus igniting civil wars alongside the fight against terrorism. In the same vein, local communities in the periphery, women and children in particular, have borne the brunt of state retreat and the coercive protection of jihadist forces. In between, the war economy is thriving from illegal mining, forced protection, and illegal taxation. The preponderance of young people under 25 in the continent, instead of being the agents of demographic dividend, are turning into a curse due to state failings and the allure of quick financial dividends being offered by the operators of the war economy. Underlying this phenomena is the explosion of technology, sophisticated autonomous weapon systems, and the pervasive influence of social media. Against this backdrop, ECOWAS continues to manage and repair the fallout between the community and the alliance of the Sahel states, which are decided to withdraw from the ECOWAS community, alongside intensive diplomatic overtures and aimed at reuniting the region. The ECOWAS heads of state and government have taken the strategic decision in the spirit of regional solidarity to safeguard the interests of all community citizens by allowing citizens of the AES to continue to enjoy all the benefits of regional integration project launched some 50 years ago today, including the free movement of persons and the right of abode and the freedom to do trade across the entire region. The Republic of Benin is not free from the terrorist incursion so long as terrorism festers in its northern neighbors. The same can be said of all the other littoral states bordering the Sahel, thanks to porous borders, weak border security, and cross-border ethnic and trade relations knitted together over the centuries. With the interlocking and mutually destructive nature of terrorism and organized crime for the entire region, ECOWAS continues to encourage collaboration on security matters with our brothers and sisters of the Alliance of the Sahelian states, despite probably lingering political differences. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, ECOWAS is acutely aware of the threat of renewed geostrategic and geopolitical processes unfolding in West Africa and beyond that threaten renewed proxy wars akin to the Cold War era, due in part to the acute insecurity facing the continent, and it is determined to avert this scenario. A first step in this direction is our efforts to scale up counter-terrorism efforts. On the directive of the ECOWAS heads of state and government, the organization is in the process of activating a 260,000 rapid deployment counter-terrorism brigade and to provide logistic and financial support to frontline states facing terrorism. While ECOWAS remains firmly committed to raising its 5,000-man brigade under the auspices of the African Peace and Security Architecture, and more particularly the Continental Standby Force, the activation of this rapid deployment force has become a necessity given the asymmetric security dynamics in the region. We are conscious of the fact that this bold initiative requires the necessary financial resources and capabilities to make it a reality. To this end, the Ministers of Finance and Defense to agree on the concrete funding modalities to raise an annual budget of 2.5 billion toward the activation of the regional counter-terrorism force. The meeting of these ministers is taking place this Friday in Abuja. By this initiative, ECOWAS is also throwing the gauntlet to bilateral and multilateral partners to complement this daring regional initiative. In particular, we hope that this summit send nations to redeem the pledge made under United Nations Security Council Resolution 2719 of December 2023 to fund 75% of African-led peace support operations. Besides the counter-terrorism effort, ECOWAS is also pursuing the operationalization of its integrated maritime security with the establishment of 3 integrated maritime centers across the region and an international maritime coordinating center in Abidjan, as well as in its strategy on countering transnational organized crime, among others. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, while expressing ECOWAS's deep appreciation to the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the Chief of Defense Staff for this groundbreaking and promising initiative, we encourage participants at this summit to crown deliberations with concrete, practical, and innovative recommendations on to the hybrid security challenges, the myriad security challenges facing Africa, and to advance our aspirations for the Africa that we want. Many thanks for your attention and wishing all of us fruitful deliberations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. ECOWAS is committed and is pretty excited by this maiden summit of African Chiefs of Defense Staff taking place in Abuja. The importance of information sharing across borders, the challenge of community conflicts, the demonization of ethnic groups described as terrorists that has led to a lot of community clashes and civil wars, the negative impact of social media, and the very powerful importance of technology. We're so grateful to Dr. Omar Aliu Toure, who has delivered that intervention to keep us on track at this summit today. And as we continue with regional bodies, we thank you so very much, sir, for your intervention. And it's time now to invite His Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf to make his way. Is AU Commission here? right. While we're waiting to make a clarification of the AU Commission's position in delivering their intervention, I'd like to make welcome Mr. Mohammed Fall, UN Resident Coordinator, Nigeria. Mr. Fall, with whom I'm most familiar. Where is he? There he is. It's good to see you. Welcome and thank you for coming. Your Excellency, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we now go to Goodwill messages, and I'd like to please crave your indulgence as His Excellency, our very, very special guest of honor, has multiple events to attend to and several papers on his desk. He represents Mr. President here, and we must keep our time in check. So I'd like to please appeal that we stay within our 5 minutes window as we enter the Goodwill message at this point. If it's shorter, it will be nicer. We're so grateful for the opportunity to hear your insights and your mind on the matter of security in this summit, whose theme is combating contemporary threats to regional peace and security, the role of strategic defense collaboration. Please help me make welcome His Excellency Lansana Kouyaté of Guinea. Please continue to clap. It's a long walk. I'd like to advise that all speakers should please use this podium. This is the podium for all speakers. Your Excellency, sir, if you would approach me, your podium is this way. This way. Thank you, sir.
I would like, first of all, to say, Madam, that there is a proverb which says that a speech does not need to be eternal for being immortal. I will be very short. Monsieur Général Christopher Musa, qui nous a fait l'honneur de nous inviter ici. Et j'étais là il y a quelques jours et la République fédérale du Nigeria, qui représente le commandant en chef des forces armées du Nigeria, le président Ahmed Bola Tinubu et Madame la vice-secrétaire générale des Nations Unies, je voudrais dire juste que les chefs d'état-major nous donnent l'occasion de nous pencher sur le thème « Combattre les menaces actuelles à la paix régionale et à la sécurité en Afrique, le rôle de la stratégie de défense collaborative. » Un sujet apparemment simple, mais je vais évoquer peut-être en un temps court ce qui psychologiquement marque l'Afrique. Il y a 54 pays qui marquent l'Afrique. Il y a 54 pays membres de ce continent qui sont là, petits ou grands, moyens du nord au sud, de l'est au centre et du centre à l'ouest. Il y a des guerres. N'ayons pas peur des mots. La lutte contre le terrorisme a été évoquée et je crois que je n'ai pas à revenir là-dessus. Mais tout ce monde est là et je crois que c'est la première fois que les chefs d'état-major de tout le continent se réunissent. Ça veut dire qu'il y a un sujet important. L'importance de ce sujet, c'est de combattre partout, quelle que soit la puissance de nos pays, prendre aller de l'avant, lancer des projets, être soutenu, tout cela n'est que précaire tant que la paix ne revient pas là où elle doit venir. Il y a la psychologie. L'Afrique n'est pas perçue comme un continent. L'Afrique est perçue comme un pays. Je le dis pour cause. Allons en Asie, en Europe ou aux États-Unis, demandons à un voyageur, allons en Asie, en Europe ou aux États-Unis, d'abord en Afrique. Il faut lui demander doublement où en Afrique. Il dira le pays. Même nous autres, Africains, quand nous sommes dehors, on veut voyager, parfois on dit je vais en Afrique. L'Afrique est perçue comme un pays. Cela vient d'où? De notre histoire ancestrale. 12e, 13e siècle où nos empires ont eu, n'est-ce pas, un moment fabuleux où du nord au sud, de l'est à l'ouest, jusqu'au centre, des empires sont nés et ont montré l'union des forces, malgré les combats qui se sont passés parfois entre nous. Mais la colonisation n'a épargné aucun pays africain. Parmi les 5 pays qui n'ont jamais été colonisés par l'Europe, qu'il s'agisse du Japon, des 2 Corées ou de la Thaïlande, il n'y a que le Nigeria qui figure en Afrique. Mesdames, Messieurs, j'aurai à intervenir lorsque les panels vont commencer, je crois que c'est mercredi, il y aura des choses à dire et à proposer. Quelles que soient nos convictions, s'il n'y a pas de paix, il n'y a pas de développement. La paix est le soubassement du développement. Et c'est la raison pour laquelle je suis heureux de voir tous ces hommes, ces femmes peut-être de l'armée qui ont fait le déplacement pour voir le sujet. Le sujet dont je vais traiter mercredi, ce sera le financement à travers le partenariat public-privé, le financement, n'est-ce pas, des armées. C'est un sujet délicat, un sujet simple, on peut le faire, et mercredi, je vous en dirai plus. Je ne veux pas faire entorse à ce que j'avais dit au début. Je vous remercie et bonne chance à cette conférence.
Je te remercie, monsieur. We're very pleased that we have a man who has served ECOWAS as the Executive Secretary, who is also the former Prime Minister, Republic of Guinea, His Excellency Lansana Kouyaté, who has delivered his intervention in French. And as we all know, part of what he said has to do with the public-private sector collaboration to enhance security within the African sub-region. The security issues in Africa are a bit complicated, but they are not insurmountable. And so would like to again give a warm round of applause to His Excellency Lansana Kouyaté. Thank you very much, sir. I see our long-standing friend, His Excellency Mohammed Ibn Chambers. We thank you for being here, sir. It's good to see you always. Welcome. I'd like, at this point, to invite my teacher and mentor, a man who has served the world at different fora. He was also in the United Nations. He was former Minister of External Affairs and former permanent representative of Nigeria to the United Nations, and only recently a man who served as Chief of Staff to the former President, His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari. Teacher, mentor, democrat, diplomat par excellence. Help me welcome Professor Ibrahim Agboala Gambari. Your Excellency, sir.
The President, Federal Republic of Nigeria, and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, ably represented by His Excellency the Vice President, Senator Shetima Kashim, GCON, members of the National Assembly, members of the Federal Executive Council are present, the Deputy Secretary General of the UN, our very own Amina Mohammed, GCON, Chief of Defense Staff, General Musa, COFR, the Chiefs of Defense Staff of the African countries here present, service chiefs and heads of security agencies, dear friends, former colleagues, Lansana Koyate, Mohammed Ibn Chamba, SRC, Leonardo Shimao, distinguished resource persons and participant members of the media, ladies. It's a great honor for me to be part of this very timely, very special, and indeed historic event of the coming together of the African defense chiefs here in Abuja, Nigeria. For those of us who have lived through pre- and post-independence of African nations, this event conjures emotion as well as nostalgia. In this regard, we recall vividly how in the late 50s, the late President Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana articulated his vision of an African collective security system through the creation of an African High Command. African High Command is the highest form of strategic defense cooperation in the continent, were it to have been established. Nkrumah's vision was further developed here in Nigeria, precisely in Lagos, in 1964, at the Organization of African Unity Council of Ministers meeting, where the creation of an African High Command was high on its agenda. I draw attention to this vision, not just because of nostalgia, because as the saying goes, you can't know where you are going unless you know where you are coming from. The translation of that vision, however, into concrete reality has eluded us in the continent. This is largely due to the fact that we have to first secure our respective countries before we can then, in the concentric circles of defense policy, secure our respective regions as we strive to secure our continent. It's therefore very symbolic that Nigeria is hosting this conference of African defense chiefs today, the very first of its kind in 2025, some 61 years on. May I therefore congratulate Mr. President, His Excellency, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, for facilitating this crucial African summit. Indeed, securing Nigeria has made it possible for the country to be at the forefront of securing West Africa. We are all aware of the creation of ECOWAS and its defense instrument ECOMOG. Joined by Ghana and other member states of ECOWAS, ECOMOG was a trailblazer in the security and defense of the sub-region of West Africa. And through the instrumentality of ECOMOG, the Nigerian armed forces have made tremendous impact on the region and continue to do so. I therefore salute our chief host of this event, General Christopher Musa, and all the service chiefs for their focus and dedication to the peace and security of the most populous sub-region in Africa, and for their foresight in convening this inaugural African Chiefs of Defense Summit. The theme of the summit, combating contemporary threats to regional peace and security in Africa, the role of strategic defense collaboration, resonates strongly with many African scholars, security experts, and policymakers alike. Neither has there been lack of practical steps to combat insecurity in Africa through collective approach. The African peace and security architecture and a supportive standby force have been created under the auspices of the African Union, and that African Standby Force was actually supposed to have become operational by 2015. The African Union Agenda 2063 emphasized silencing the guns by the year 2020, which has passed, and now shifted to 2030. Still, the guns are still blazing, as Sudan, South Sudan, the Sahel, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Southern Africa continue to witness violent conflict. According to some research work done by the African Research Network for Regional and Global Governance Innovation, with headquarters in Savannah Center for Diplomacy, Democracy and Development here in Abuja, there are now over 1,000 insurgency groups in Africa, and the number keeps rising. And the majority of our regional economic commission are actually dealing with banditry and terrorism and other forms of insurgency. So regional economic communities was supposed to be primarily about economic integration, has to, of course, devote a lot of its attention to issues of dealing with banditry, terrorism, and insurgency. Let me conclude by expressing the strongest conviction that Africa's collective security can only be enhanced with active, practical, and proactive collaboration at the regional and continental levels. There must be synergy in military cooperation, promotion of common training, promotion of common doctrinal concept, sharing of intelligence, the interoperability of armaments, but also capacity building, particularly in airlifting, all of which are essential for operationalization of the African Standby Force. We must also upgrade and strengthen our defense industries and own our technologies in order to avoid control from external forces. Finally, this summit, this historic summit, the very first of its kind, of African defense chiefs, should not yet be another talk shop. We must strive forces. Finally, this summit, this historic summit, the very first of its kind, of African defense chiefs, should not yet be another talk shop. We must strive at concrete and realistic solutions to combat old as well as new threats to peace and security in Africa. Africa must design, own, and build a security architecture that guarantees our sovereignties and guarantees human security in all of its dimensions. I thank you for your kind attention, and I wish all of us fruitful deliberation. Thank you.
Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen.
Defence staff. And I'd like at this moment also to recognise the Minister of State for Defence, and also to recognise Professor Gambari, Professor Bande, Professor Lulumba. You always, you articulate what we're all thinking, but oftentimes we don't have the opportunity or perhaps are in a position to say. So thank you for being here with us. I'd like to also recognise my big brother, His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Ibn Chabas, and I would like to recognise most especially the women experts that are in the panels that will be with you throughout the next 3 days. And just to say that, as we've talked about the women, every one of you is born of a woman, unless you want to challenge that. But secondly, the burden on which women face, whether they lose their husbands, ultimate sacrifice in conflict, or that they are the ones that lose their lives, they are the ones that lose of all the conflicts that we have today in the world. And so for them, I think they deserve their place here today and recognition. Last but not least, in his 7 to 10 minutes, David Wiseman, thank you for talking to us about the day after. Often it is forgotten that those that managed to go home also have part very much of the societies that left to serve. And so thank you for reminding us. and the government of Nigeria for your warm invitation and your welcome to the United Nations. I speak as a proud African woman and as someone who has seen the cost of insecurity in families and communities on our continent, from Boko Haram in Maiduguri to the RSF in Sudan and to the conflict in Ethiopia and more recently in Gaza. These gatherings mark the birth, this one in particular, marks the birth of a new era in African security cooperation at such a critical moment. It is the first of its kind to represent the boots on the ground, a rare opportunity to connect their realities with the policy decisions that shape our continent's security. 5 people, each one deserves a life in safety and in dignity. And that means protecting civilians, respecting borders, and standing by the principles of international law and the UN Charter. Above all, it calls for a united approach against our common threats. We know that Africa is at the epicenter of global terrorism deaths, and today Professor Gambari has told us just how many of those insurgency groups are on the continent. Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State affiliates coordinate across our continent, and the attacks in West Africa coastal countries surging 250% in 2 years. Violent extremism, once thought to be history, is back again in the Lake Chad Basin and in Somalia and beyond. By last year's end, over 14,000 schools were closed in the central Sahel due to the conflict. Who are forcibly recruited, we see young people who are drawn by fear, by money, by a false promise of belonging. And when young people see no path to education or to justice and a future, extremist propaganda finds an audience, and we risk losing an entire generation. In this new era of technology, where it should be advancing as a human endeavor, these groups are using new technologies like unmanned aerial systems and improvised explosive devices to wreak havoc. We cannot afford to be bystanders. Africa must take ownership, must be proactive, and shape how these tools will be used. Cyberspace today is now a battle space. Elections are manipulated, institutions undermined, lies are spread until neighbor turns against neighbor. And we have seen this before. Once it was a radio carrying messages that ignited genocide. Today it is social media amplifying hate at terrifying speed. Artificial intelligence is already transforming the landscape of security. Today we do have AI tools that are helping countries suffering from conflict and insecurity, identifying food insecurity, predicting displacement caused by climate shocks, even detecting and clearing landmines. Soon they could help us to spot patterns of unrest before violence erupts. Sadly, the same technology that offers solutions also carries profound risks. AI's expansion into security systems raises fundamental questions about human rights, dignity, and the rule of law, from autonomous border surveillance to predictive policing. It creates fertile ground for misunderstanding. AI-enabled cyber attacks could cripple entire infrastructure and paralyze essential services. Algorithms today are already being used to make life or death decisions. And to turn to another challenge, climate change. It is also reshaping the geography of security across our continent, fueling food scarcity, endangering our people, extreme heat, sea level rise, shifting rainfall patterns are driving displacement, exacerbating resource competition, and fueling instability. Shrinking water levels in the Lake Chad Basin have displaced over 3 million people. I saw this firsthand when I was Minister of Environment. The evidence is overwhelming, and it is destabilizing our world. The UN Security Council has acknowledged that climate change is a threat multiplier that fuels conflict, displaces populations, and undermines state stability. The International Court of Justice recently recognized climate change as an urgent and existential threat to our world. IPCC has left no room for doubt. Africa is one of the most exposed regions in the world to climate change. The rippling effect is rising displacement and migration, putting food systems and infrastructure under severe pressure, and creating more opportunities for instability and exploitation. The result speaks volumes. Climate change is a clear and present danger to peace. Our seas are also becoming a new frontline. Organised crime on our waters is feeding violence on our land. In the Gulf of Guinea, piracy, illicit trade are funding terrorism. In the Red Sea, maritime insecurity is undermining stability far beyond the shoreline. Excellencies, Excellences, each of these threats all share one characteristic. They are transnational. Our response must be that too. When we act in isolation, we hand our adversaries their greatest advantage, our division. Regional cooperation is the linchpin of African security and defense. But we also note that this is easier said than done. Defense collaboration is not simple. We are talking about 54 countries, each with their own policies, their histories, their priorities, and their difficulties. This makes it all the more remarkable that though the complexity and diversity, African forces find ways to act together, and you have. From the African Union's peace support operations to the Algeria African Center for Study and Research on Terrorism, Cape Verde Center for Security and Transnational Organized Crime, and Cameroon's International School for Security Forces, amongst many. The African Union deploys peace support operations where others can and will not. The multinational Joint Task Force in the Lake Chad Basin coordinates regional efforts against Boko Haram. ECOWAS in West Africa and IGAD in the Horn are coordinating troops, logistics, and political engagement. The G5 Sahel and the Accra Initiative have also played key roles. But too often, such initiatives are being held back by mistrust, tensions, gaps, and in some cases, sadly, undermined by the international community. Trust is not built overnight, but without it, every effort to strengthen our partnerships and our response in defense of our people will fall short. Collaboration must be targeted and intentional, and I see three opportunities where our unity can tip the balance. First is resources. Pooling our budgets for joint responses makes us stronger than scattering the spending. We proved this when Nigeria helped in the Gambia and Liberia. We must find that spirit again. At the same time, we need to think bigger about financing. National security budgets must be complemented by international support. We can leverage the prevention components of other budgets to reinforce stability and reduce the cost of conflict before they spiral. Cutting off illicit financing is part of this battlefront. Yaba's anti-money laundering work and the cooperation through the multi-joint task force and the Lake Chad Basin Commission are vital to choke off the money flows that sustain conflict from outside of the continent. Second, intelligence and innovation. We need the right tools and mapping in place to plan and to drive strategy at scale. Reinforcing the Accra Initiative, the ECOWAS Standby Force, and giving the Joint Threat Fusion and Analysis Cell the support it needs to ensure data become decisions. The same applies at sea, joint patrols that make the Yaoundé architecture real protection for people and infrastructure. And innovation must be part of our defense, collaborating on AI from drones to cyber tools, and building on African Union's AI strategy can help us to set common standards to keep technology serving people. And third, people and partnerships. Our continent is full of military and academic centers of excellence. We need to harness this strategy and this training capacity. Use it more efficiently and deploy it where it is most needed. And we must unite the public and the private sectors. Soldiers learning side by side with engineers, technicians, innovators, regular fora with business to share cutting-edge knowledge. This is how Africa's own labs and companies can power our security future. In turn, the private sector benefits from access to credit to grow their companies and to feed their bottom line. It creates an enabling environment for young people to strive for their futures. Excellencies, Excellences, history has shown that African military cooperation and collaboration has already proven itself on the world stage. 3 decades ago, Ghana and Nigeria pioneered ECOMOG in Liberia, when regional interventions were untested. African military diplomacy stepped up into breach when others hesitated. From those West African origins and beyond, Rwanda transformed from recovery to becoming the #2 global contributor for peacekeeping forces. Today, 9 of 15 contributors of UN peacekeeping African troops, all active in Somalia and CAR and the DRC. So we are not only recipients of support from the international community, we are contributors of that support. And without African leadership, there would be no effective peacekeeping. Now, peacekeeping is entering a new era. However, this new era is facing headwinds. Politically, the UN Security Council is deadlocked, and political support is eroding. Meanwhile, external actors are pursuing their own agendas on African soil, complicating and exacerbating our security landscape. Financially, missions are now underfunded. This makes Resolution 2719 of Somalia so vital. With this resolution, and the UN Security Council acknowledged a simple truth: African crises demand African leadership, backed by global financial support for African solutions to succeed. This era, a new era of peacekeeping, also brings with it an opportunity for a new face. That face has to be younger, more diverse in people and skills that will work with communities on the front and the day after. And that includes, Excellencies, women. On the day after, women are the anchors of recovering and helping to rebuild trust, to heal communities long after the guns fall silent. The day after also demands something else from us as military leaders: justice and accountability. They matter the day after. Everyone deserves their day in court. Even accused terrorists, as difficult as this may be able to accept, they must face justice in a court of law. And let us perhaps remind ourselves that terrorists are not born. They are our children. They are the young people who have gone astray, badly astray. And it is our duty to bring them back out from the cold into building their nations and not destroying them. These are some of the issues that international community will raise, and as leaders you will have to be in a position that you can defend. Excellencies, let us be reminded why we need peace for development. Without it, neither the Sustainable Development Goals nor Agenda 2063 can be achieved. Farmers cannot farm without security. Energy systems cannot be built without being protected. Every school, every hospital depends on security. And we cannot have our children, our girls, in fear of kidnapping. Without security, development is impossible. Without development, security cannot hold. And lasting peace must be built upon both. Both are the foundation of our agendas 2030 and Africa's vision for Agenda 2063. They connect the dots between prosperity, good governance, and peace. Food security, education, health, decent work, social protection, green technology, and resilience, justice and institutions, and people must be able to trust in. We know that every additional year of schooling reduces the likelihood of a young person joining armed groups by up to 13%. This evidence begs the question: how do we invest in peace? Is it just military spending? Is it development spending? Is it both? That is the discussion that we will need to have in this room and beyond. And it means tackling root causes. It means democracy that is robust and representative, not on constitutional changes dressed up as solutions. While this might seem legitimate in many eyes, in the longer term, democracy and by extension security will be weakened. Instead, strong institutions, underpinned by strong democracies and strong security apparatus, are the safeguard against instability. Let's give some deep thought to the resources that we are allocating to achieve stability. Last year, the world spent $2.7 trillion on the military, more than at any point in the history of the world. Yet insecurity has not diminished. In fact, conflicts are spreading, not shrinking. At the same time, the world fell short by $4 trillion each year for just basic development needs. $4 trillion missing for school, for jobs, for clinics. That imbalance raises a clear question. What kind of spending truly delivers the peace you are willing to fight to protect? This is at the heart of the African Union's call to silence the guns, because silencing the guns is not just about weapons laid down. It is about investing in people, tackling root causes, and creating societies where stability is built on justice, opportunity, and trust. Success will only be possible if we create the fiscal space for investing in people and stability. And so we do need in Africa a fairer chance and a fairer finance, debt relief, affordable credit, and a global system that works for Africa is what we need today. We need a global financial architecture that reflects today's realities. And we need African countries strong, but more importantly, united in calling for these changes. Our chiefs, excellencies, friends, strategic defense collaboration is not a slogan. It is the bridge between the threats that we face today and the peace that we promise tomorrow. I've seen the challenge, I know you have. I've also seen what's possible when we find common ground. The outcome of this week must be heard beyond this room. It must be carried into every international forum where decisions on defense are being made on our behalf. That's how we will shape Africa's security on Africa's terms. But reshaping security also means changing mindsets. We must see women not only as victims of war, but as partners in peace. And just as women are the bedrock of peace in our homes, they must be a part of the search for peace on the war front. This is not about winning wars, it is about winning peace, and is about doing it together. As Nelson Mandela Madiba once said, I dream of the realization of the unity of Africa, whereby its leaders combine in their efforts to solve the problems of this continent. That dream calls on us to act with resolve, with courage, with trust, and a shared purpose to safeguard the future of Africa, the future of Africans that we want. I thank you.
As always, Her Excellency Amina Mohammed, United Nations Deputy Secretary General, is received in greeting by Mr. Vice President representing Mr. President, and she exchanges pleasantries with everybody across the board, a well-beloved daughter of Nigeria. Thank you, sir. You may be seated. Thank you very much. Her Excellency Amina Mohammed is a well-loved Nigerian, a well-loved African, and she has made that intervention so powerful, as she always does across the world. Let's algorithms, cybercrime, climate change, the role of women. Women's role is not about being victims of war, but being partners in peace. We thank you so very much for your intervention. Another round of applause for Africa's and the world's leading #2 civil servant, United Nations Deputy Secretary General, Her Excellency Amina Mohammed. I'd like to crave your indulgence that all your speeches should be brought to the corner of the Director of Ceremonies here. All the speeches that have been presented for the purpose of the Secretariat, Squadron Leader Mohammed and Mr. David Oderinde will be collecting at this corner. So if you would please send your aides to help us have those documents. For the photographs, let me announce that the front row will be the first to take the photographs when it's time for photography. And after that, all African Chiefs of Defense would be taking the photograph in batch 2. Let us also remember to deliver those speeches to us at this corner. Your Excellency, Special Guest of Honor, sir, we have quite a number of persons here who speak different languages. I'll just make a beehive to greet our Ghanaian delegates, Akwaba. They are our neighbors. We welcome you. As always, we say Mjambo to our Kenyan delegates. Assalamu alaikum to our North African. Regard to those who are coming from Mozambique, Angola. And bonjour et bienvenue to our French-speaking delegates. We thank you so very much, all of you, for being here. And I'd like to Since Her Excellency Amina Mohammed has spoken about women, we know that those who lead our security cannot do so if they do not have peace of mind, and their wives provide that. I'd like to greet and welcome the President of the Defense and Police Officers' Wives Association, wife of the CDS, Mrs. Christopher Musa, who is here in all her glory, in lemon and white, with all her team members, the wife of the Chief of Army Staff, President Naowa, wife of the Chief of the Air Staff, President Nafowa, wife of the Navy Officers' Wives Association, who is here with us, and wife of the Police Inspector General, so she is president of POWA, Police Officers' Wives Association. Can you wave from where you are so we can see that we're all in good hands, men, well looked after and provided support from the women who stay with us, who look after the home front while all this work is going on. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we know that it is a difficult exercise to worry about the security of Africa. As the French would say, le défi sécuritaire de l'Afrique est complexe, mais ce sommet d'aujourd'hui travaille à la solution. We believe that the summit today will provide most of the solutions that we are seeking for. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is now an honor to remind you that as soon as the next speech at the very high point is made, there would be souvenirs given to our very special guest of honor by the CDS, would crave the indulgence of His Excellency, Mr. President's representative, to stay after his speech to receive these souvenirs. It is now my singular honor and pleasure to invite to the podium our special guest of honor, His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, represented today by Nigeria's unflappable #2 citizen, His Excellency the very distinguished Senator Kashim Shettima, to deliver his special guest of honor speech. Thank you, sir.
Kindly sit down, please. The President of the Senate, distinguished Senator Goodwill Akpabio, ably represented by Senate President Emeritus and Chairman Senate Committee on Defense, Senator Ahmed Ibrahim and GCON. Senator Adams Aliu Oshomole, Chairman Senate Committee on Interior. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, ably represented by the Vice Chairman of the Committee on Defense, Right Honorable Ahmed Abdullahi Kalambaina, and other members of the National Assembly present here. The Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, my own Ms. Amina Mohammed. The former Prime Minister of the Republic of Guinea, His Excellency Lansana Kouyaté, the former President of ECOWAS Commission, His Excellency Dr. Mohamed Ibn Chambers, the President of the ECOWAS Commission, Dr. Aliu Toure, ably represented by the ECOWAS Commissioner, Political Affairs, Peace and Security, Ambassador Abdul Fattah Musa, the Honorable Minister of State for Defense, Dr. Muhammad Bello Matoli Maradun, the former Minister of External Affairs, former permanent representative of Nigeria to the United Nations, elder statesman, Professor Ibrahim Agbola Gambari, CFR, the convener and chief host, the Nigerian Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, OFR, and other service chiefs and defense chiefs from African countries, all service chiefs of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, former chiefs of defense staff, and service chiefs present here. I'm quite delighted and appreciative of their showing solidarity with General Goodwill Musa. I want to mention Air Chief Marshal Mohammed Al-Amin Dagash, General A.O. Ogbomudia, General Martin Luther Agwai, Admiral O.S. Ibrahim, Air Chief Marshal O.O. Peterin, General A.G. Olonishakin, General, my own, this is my own very personal friend, General Loki Elionye Oye Nuchua Irabo, and former service chiefs, Lieutenant General O.A. Hejerika, Lieutenant General Farooq Yahya, Vice Admiral A.Z. Gambo, and Air Marshal I.O. Amao. We truly appreciate your presence here. Heads of military establishments and senior military officers, both serving and retired, heads of security and paramilitary agencies present here, members of the diplomatic corps, members of the academia, especially a Pan-Africanist and activist, Professor Patrick Lodge Otiono Lumumba. International organizations represented here, captains of industry, equally represented by the MD, by the group operating officer of NNPC, heads of federal government agencies and parastatals, distinguished delegates, members of the fourth asset of the Rim, honored guests, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I want to first of all appreciate our own irrepressible Eugenia Abu. She's a 19. When she graduated from ABU Zaria with a degree in English in 1981, I was a secondary school pupil. She's a creative writer. She has MSc, MA in Comparative Policy Studies from the University of London, and another MA in Creative Writing from another university in the UK. He wrote 2 books, one an essay and a poetry, a book of poems. So Eugenia Abu, we are ever grateful. For 17 years, she was the anchor at NTA, NTA's prime time news by 9 p.m. She retired, but not tired. She retired as an executive director of programs at NTA. So we have to eulogize you. We have to celebrate you. We have to honor you, and we have to respect you. The reality of our geography has made us more than kith and kin. We are bound as a family, sharing not just borders, but destiny. And in this family, defense is the first expression of love. Each member can promise the other. This gathering is therefore not just a convergence of uniforms and titles. It is a summoning of Africa's guardians to the village choir of ideas. There has never been a time when our collective defense invited us so urgently to sit together and reason together. This summit, the first of its kind, could not have come at a better time. I am therefore deeply honored to welcome each of you to Abuja, the heart of Nigeria and the home of Africa's endless possibilities. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the enormity of threats across our continent compels us to pause and reflect. From the deserts where insurgency festers, to the heights where piracy prowls, from the silent corridors of cybercrime to the ruthless networks of transnational criminals, none of these tragedies respect borders, and neither should our response. What is true of our challenges must also be true of our resolve. We cannot neutralize these threats in isolation. This is the moment to reassess our military objectives in the collective aspirations to make Africa safe. It is time to forge a new doctrine of continental defense, one rooted in trust, shared intelligence, and coordinated strategy. Nigeria's promise has always been simple and firm: to be a good neighbor and a brother's keeper in the struggle for peace. Our armed forces have stood shoulder to shoulder with our neighbors and far beyond in peacekeeping missions, counter-terrorism operations, and humanitarian endeavors. we hold no illusion. Security is the foundation upon which the edifice of progress must stand. That is why we must use this summit not merely as a meeting, but as a covenant to deepen cooperation through joint training, harmonized doctrines, and interoperable systems. For this to endure, we must build a framework where our defense institutions speak with one voice and act with one purpose. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the nature of warfare has evolved. The threats of today are asymmetric, digital, and often invisible. Our response must not be less dynamic. We must invest in cyber defense, artificial intelligence, and indigenous military innovation. Africa cannot remain merely a consumer of technology. We must be creators, innovators, and owners of the tools that secure our tomorrow. I therefore urge this summit to explore avenues for defense industrial cooperation, collaboration, research partnerships, and African-led solutions to African security challenges. In this journey, I call upon the organized private sector to be our ally, to invest in the future of defense as an investment in the survival of nations. Our struggles for peace have not come without heroes and heroines. Across battlefields known and unknown, valiant men and women of our armed forces have laid down their lives in defense of their nations. Their sacrifice is the eternal price of peace, and the least we can do is honor them by ensuring their legacy is enshrined in the institutions we build. The values we uphold and the partnerships we forge. So this summit must not dissolve with the applause of its closing session. I propose the establishment of a permanent African Chiefs of Defense Staff Forum, a platform for continuous dialogue, strategic foresight, and operational coordination. Let us institutionalize this spirit of unity and make it the cornerstone of Africa's security architecture. The future of Africa depends on the choices we make today. Let us rise above division and embrace cooperation. Let us imagine and build an Africa where peace is not the exception but the norm, where the language of war gives way to the grammar of progress, and where the dignity of our people is shielded by our collective resolve. Finally, I reserve for special recognition and in deference to my sister, Ms. Amina J. Mohammed, I wish to recognize and appreciate Field Marshal Ogogo Lillian Musa. You know, the wives of our service chiefs, our army officers are a step above their husband. Then General Gwabin Musa is a general, so I will address her as Field Marshal Ogogo Lillian Musa. We appreciate you. We thank you most sincerely with your team for holding the home fort. You are the fulcrum on which our society rests. We are mightily proud of you and we appreciate your efforts. And your vision clear and focused. On this note, it is my singular honor and privilege, on behalf of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, to declare open the African Chiefs of Defense Staff Summit, Abuja 2025. Thank you, and may God bless us all.
Very much. I'd like to crave the indulgence of His Excellency to please remain on the podium for the souvenirs that the Chief of Defense Staff will be presenting to him. At this point, I'd like us to give a resounding African Chiefs of Defense Staff clap to His Excellency, our special guest of honor, who has delivered such a heartwarming special guest of honor speech on behalf of Mr. President. The Chief of Defense Staff will make his way up. The souvenirs are expected to be on their way to him now, and they're bringing them up. Chief of Defense Staff, sir, if you will step up, we'll bring the souvenirs to you. Thank you, sir. We have them here. These are very special souvenirs that are being given to our special guest of honor in remembrance of this summit 2025, which is the maiden summit. And after the souvenirs have been given, would please request the front row to please step forward for the photographs at this point. So the souvenirs are making their way up to the Chief of Defense Staff, who is our host, and this is a homegrown Nigerian artifact that has been presented. A photo moment. Congratulations to the Chief of Defense Staff, and we thank our special guest of honor for all that he does. At this point, I'd like to also have the next souvenir. Are we presenting the next souvenir then? Yes, absolutely. So the next souvenir is making its way, a very special piece that will sit on the table of a special guest of honor, an insignia of the Chief of Defense Staff. Thank you very much, sir, for your patience. At this point, I'd like to call for the photographs. We have another one for Haji Amina Mohammed. Haji Amina Mohammed, you have to step up, please, quickly, so that we'll bring that to a close. Thank you very much indeed. His Excellency has our very special daughter at this point, who represents not just Africa, but all of the world as the United Nations Deputy Secretary General, Her Excellency Haji Amina Mohammed. At this point, I'd like that the three of you should please step forward for the photograph. If you'll step down, 1, 2, and then the front row can now join. Can the front row please galvanize for this photograph, after which I'll invite the African Chiefs of Defense that should make the front page. And join this photograph. There will be a couple of people who might want to stand in the back. So this is the photograph. The African Chiefs of Defense will be in the next photography. There will be people who will be standing in the back of the photograph to make it complete. Will our photographers please help us with this arrangement? So people can be seen they have to go to the top and then stand in the back. Correct. More people can join in the back now to make this photograph make sense. Could you join in the back? Right. Thank you very much, sir, for your patience. He's making his way. Our African Chiefs of Defense should please.
All right, that was the African Chief of Defense Staff Summit, an event that will bring African defense leaders together to curb security issues in Africa, and of course to also look at the security challenges, affecting African countries. The maiden edition, and this is different leaders, of course, coming together to discuss, and indeed, interesting times ahead for African security and what's happening, of course, in the African region. You're still watching News Central TV, and after now, we'll be moving to more updates from the world of sport.